Thank you, Madam Speaker, for recognizing me and giving me the opportunity to contribute in this very important debate as we discuss the affairs, the significant affairs of our country, as we discuss not just our policies and the money that we're allocating for 2024, but the overall development of Trinidad and Tobago that within 2 years will see a decade of PNM governance. Madam Speaker, you would not have understood the importance of the debate if the only speaker you heard was the speaker that just preceded me. The MP for Dabadi O'Meara, who is one of our 2 ministers of education, has that sector has been given the largest allocation by the Minister of Finance, and that contribution was the least substantive contribution we've had here today. And I'll explain why. And I'll explain why, Madam Speaker, as I go through exactly what the member presented. And I'll have to come back to my introduction because I find it almost offensive that for $8.022 billion, we can get an opening remark about a laptop program and how dare the members of the opposition bring up a laptop program in 2023. And, you know, it reminded me of a quote. Somebody here said, "You're big and you have sense." And clearly, not everybody has sense in this house, Madam Speaker. Clearly, not everybody has sense. When they were elected into office in 2015, they met a laptop program. According to the member for Diego Martin Central, and now according to the member for Dabadi O'Meara, the laptop program, according to them, was rife with issues. Problems abounded, and that I think they referenced whether or not the laptops were properly utilized, etc. Rife with issues. What would a responsible administration do? What would a responsible administration who believes in a knowledge-driven economy, who believes in including technology in school, who believes and understands the difference between getting past the digital divide and moving from an analog world into a digital world, what would a responsible administration do? They would then take what they found, refine it, optimize it, and make it work. What did the PNM administration do? They scrapped it all together. And then expect us to believe that they're big and they have sense. But it could never be like that. It could never be true that you could find students in 2015. There is a laptop program that says what the UNC administration, the People's Partnership Administration, believes in. We believe in equitable access to education. We believe that in 2010 to 2015, in 2010 you could have recognized the importance of ensuring that every student in Trinidad and Tobago, once you're entering Form 1, must have access to technology. That it does not matter if you are from a rural community, if you are from any space in Trinidad and Tobago, that you have a right, a human right, to be able to access quality education in this. And you see that, and you say, you know what? We don't want this. We do not want this for our children. We do not want this for our country, because at the end of the day, according to them, the laptops weren't good enough. So you couldn't find some, and you found them now, and you found them in 2020 during the pandemic. And so, Madam Speaker, as I come into this debate, and we are coming to the end of day 3 on the debate, and it's on a very rare occasion that I enter the debate this far along. And so I've had the distinct pleasure now of listening to several government speakers. And the irony of Dabadi O'Meara referencing a script for members of the opposition when I could give you the opening for every government member right now. And it starts off, we thank our constituency, very good, happy that you've recognized that you're a member of the House of Representatives, which followed by congratulations to Diego Martin Northeast, congratulations to the Prime Minister, and right, one after the other, right? Well done. And I understand the importance of a narrative shift. I understand the importance of a rebrand and a makeover for this PNM government. I get it, right? Because what you have is 2015 to 2018, we saw a particular type of narrative. In 2015, we were told things are very bad, terrible, tighten your belt, problems. We were then told that based on our work, things are getting a little bit better. Madam Speaker, I entered public life, active politics in the other place in 2017. And at that time, my maiden contribution on October 24th, 2017, it was in response to a budget called Changing the Paradigm. We were promised by same member for Diego Martin Northeast, same person that they are congratulating ad nauseum at this point in time, that the paradigm was going to change in 2017. Then we were told in 2018, same Diego Martin Northeast, that there is a turnaround. I remember it very clearly because that was the year Diego Martin Northeast told us he could see clearly now. That was the year. He said the dark days were done, things great, we could see clearly now, perfect. By 2019, we were told there would be stability, strength, and growth. At this point in time, some of my colleagues here, the member for Baratara, Sanon, and myself, we were in another place, very, very young, very enthusiastic, in a space contributing to a conversation on national development, contributing to the conversation on our appropriations, on what this money that we are talking about in the people's house, in the parliament, what would that do? What would that mean for the people of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago? So we went through the paradigm shift, and I recall then, 2017 in another place, talking about the cuts to gate, talking about the fact that when you practice cuts and you consider it savings and you take money out of the education sector, that what you will reap in the future is you will face the consequences for your actions then. And I warned the members of the government, this is in 2017, and the Hansard would play out the contribution that I made then. I said if you practice slash and burn economics on the education sector, within the next 5+ years, you would face more problems than solutions by trying to save this money then. Here we are now discussing an education sector and discussing a space that is facing the consequences of ill-conceived, poorly considered policy decisions by a PNM administration. Here we are today when we are discussing what is happening in every sector, national security, health, social services, every sector, we are seeing persons now try to make excuses for the consequences for their actions. In 2020, when we were looking at the fiscal 2021, we were given resilience in the face of a global pandemic, and last year we were told tenacity and stability in the face of global challenges. So they had the pandemic years. And in the pandemic years, for an administration that is so comfortable in its incompetence, so easy to give the population excuses instead of actions, the pandemic years served to be a gift to an administration that is incapable of acting in the best interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And so what we got in those years is that anything that happened, anything that we faced, we'd blame it on the pandemic, right? And so I sat here last Monday and I listened to the Minister of Finance. And the Minister of Finance says we are building the capacity for diversifications. Sounds good, right? Now, mind you, if you listen to people talk about building capacity for diversification, what you are going to think is that the persons that are talking to you, that they've now found themselves here, that it's not almost 9 years of governance plus decades altogether of PNM administrations in a post-independence Trinidad and Tobago. You would believe that the last 8 years was the only 8 years they had to make a contribution and that it wasn't enough. But all right. So here we are, Madam Speaker. We are told now that they are going to put more money into things, $8.022 billion in the education sector. And I've said it time and time again, that what we've been facing in the education sector is not a resource problem, because the Minister of Education herself, who I guess in this debate will shadow me, because she has yet come into the debate, but in this space now, has said in the contribution and in the last fiscal that the education sector has for the past 7 years been in the top 5 in terms of allocations, and listed that meant that it is a priority for this administration. But giving money in, putting money into the space, but not measuring or seeing or having any actual results, that does not make it a priority. So we don't have a resource problem, you know. We have a management problem in the education sector. So that you could put $8 billion, you could put $10 billion, you could put $15 billion. If you don't put innovation, ideas, creativity, and political will in the education sector to act on behalf of the teachers and the students, you are going to get the same thing. You are going to get the same thing. So as I look through the budget documents, the Minister of Finance said to the people of Trinidad and Tobago that we are now living in a knowledge-based economy, and that we are pursuing an education system that is modern, relevant, technology-driven, and accessible to all. This is a discovery that the Minister of Finance made in 2023. And I would like to read into the Hansard. Budget time, when you are in the budget debate, is a very reflective moment. You think about Trinidad and Tobago over the years and what we could have done had we had proper management over time. And something I said to myself as I prepared, you know, we usually look back a couple years and whatnot. And I said, let me see what was the discussion 20 years ago in Trinidad and Tobago. So that is 2002. In 2003, as they discussed fiscal 2004. And at that time, different persons would have sat here, and the then opposition leader would have been one Mr. Basdeo Pandey, a former Prime Minister. And in his response to the budget for fiscal 2004, he spoke about the United National Congress, the years that the UNC would have been in government before, as in 1995 years. And Mr. Basdeo Pandey at that time would have said, when the UNC was in government, we presented 7 national budgets. Each budget was an overall plan for the economic development of Trinidad and Tobago. Each budget is built on its predecessor and laid the foundation for its successor. There was a continuity from budget to budget. Each UNC budget was informed and based on a clear vision that the UNC had for Trinidad and Tobago. That vision, this is 2003, October 14th, 2003. That vision to transform Trinidad and Tobago into a knowledge-based society with a globally competitive, technology-driven, diversified economy that will sustain full employment, growing prosperity, equal opportunity, a secure life, social cohesion, and the highest standard of living for all of our citizens. I emphasize all, end quote. Members on the other side like to pretend that 2010 to 2015, and I think the Prime Minister would at some point in time call it lost years. But if you look at the reality of Trinidad and Tobago, and if they could come out of their delusion, they would realize the lost years are the PNM years. The lost years are the PNM, because in 2003, October 14, 2003, a person could sit, very delulu, a person could sit in this house and say to a PNM government in 2003, sorry, let us do the work then, 20 years ago. If I tell you, in 2002, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I was in my uniform in secondary school. We were reading about it. In 2003, right? And I was preparing to choose my subjects for CXC. I come and meet some of the Diego Martin, Northeast, was in the parliament. He heard this speech. Diego Martin, Northeast, heard the knowledge-based society in 2002 and thought it wasn't a good idea. But come in 2023 now to tell us something that had they had the foresight 20 years ago. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I encourage every right-thinking citizen of Trinidad and Tobago to take a look at the discussions that have obtained in Parliament, that we've gone through here, and realize that there are years for action and there are years for rhetoric. And the years for action are all the years the PNM are out of office. All of the years that they are out of office. And so that what you have is a constant need for a reset. And so while I sat here and I listened to my colleagues and I listened to some of the younger members of the PNM bench contribute to this debate, I'm going to tell you the truth, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It broke my heart to hear the contribution for the member for Laventille East Morva, and I'll tell you why. As the member contributed, there was a sense of a genuine desire to help the people, a genuine desire to help the people of the community. And so the problem wasn't the desire, the problem was the execution. In that the people of Trinidad and Tobago, deserve more than parliamentarians coming to them and saying, let us be happy that we're getting $1,000 for school books. Let us be happy for the latrine eradication program. Let us be happy for subsidized spaces where we can try to make life a little bit easier for you. And I'll tell you why. Because what the people of Trinidad and Tobago want and deserve is an opportunity to make a life for yourself, an opportunity to succeed and to thrive. And that the idea that the policies that the government have implemented over the past 9 years at least, but certainly the 46 years overall that they've been in office, that those policies have created a dependent Trinidad and Tobago citizen in an independent nation. It breaks my heart, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It breaks my heart because the thinking, the political philosophy across the floor is that the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago must be happy with us giving them $1,000 as opposed to giving them the opportunity to never need that $1,000. To never need that $1,000. And And if you, and Mr. Deputy Speaker, when you take a look overall, and you listen overall across the board, speaker after speaker, we as citizens of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago are being told to say thank you for measures that are digging us out of a hole that the PNM created, and that is not what we are supposed to be doing. It is not what we are supposed to be doing. We are not supposed to be saying thank you for back pay, that is money you've earned. You are not supposed to have to be saying thank you for a market food box. You are not supposed to be saying thank you for food support. You, as the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, you are supposed to tell the people of Trinidad and Tobago, in the last 9 years, we've done this to put us on the path for success. This is where we are at now. This is where we're going. Where we are going is nowhere fast with you. And you must know that. And you must know that. And stop coming here and telling us time and time again that we are painting a negative picture of Trinidad and Tobago. If you live in Trinidad and Tobago, if you exist in Trinidad and Tobago, you know the reality. One of my friends, a very good friend of mine, who works in the marketing space, has always said to me, a lot of people, a lot of advertisers or persons who work in PR and marketing, the ones who are not very good, they believe that the trick is to fool the consumer. Say something over and over and over. Say things are good, things that the opposition is trying to be negative, and we are creating this impression. And so that if you say it over and over, somebody will believe you. But the people of Trinidad and Tobago are the people of Trinidad and Tobago. They know exactly what exists here. They know what the issues we are facing are. We cannot come here and tell anybody anything that they don't already know. And so what you are doing, instead of using the opportunity, using the resources of the country to make the lives of citizens easier, you have instead decided that you'll take a propaganda campaign and you'll tell people that the opposition is negative rather than you have been incompetent. That is the strategy. And so I want to get to the education sector, looking clinically at some of the things that we would have been promised, some of the things that would have been discussed over time, and certainly some of the things that we have not seen. Very amazingly, in the budget statement by the Minister of Finance stated to the public that the SCA examination data, that the data from the SCA examination from 2010 to present, even before, this is a quote from the Minister of Finance, reveals consistent and troubling percentages of students who do not achieve 50% or more in the exam. The question of success rates at the SCA level has been one that has plagued us for the last few years. But this blatant attempt at revisionist history for information that is publicly available, easily accessible, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is insulting to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I have, and I would like to put on the record very clearly, that if you look at the statistical data and you look at SCA results in particular, that you saw massive improvements between the years 2012 to 2016, and that is as a direct result of interventions made by a People's Partnership Administration. That when the People's Partnership entered office in 2010, you were looking at the percentage of persons scoring below 30% was somewhere around 11.6%. Persons scoring above 50 were 67.5%. This is 2010, so I'm using it as baseline because that is a change in administration. By 2014, and I am using 2014, but we can look at the other years, because that is where you start to see the results of policy changes. Logic will take you from point A to point B, because I hear the member for San Fernando is suggesting that things may not be but by 2014, you see students scoring below 30% reached 4.4%, that is from meeting it at 11.6%. Students scoring above 50, 70.7%, that is after meeting it at 67.5%. Students scoring above 90% in the highest percentile, 8.9% in 2014, that is after meeting it at 5.9%. The SEA results for 2015, the last year the People's Partnership was in office, the SEA results is before the entrance of the PNM administration of 2015. You had the percentage of persons scoring below 30% was 1.1%, with 91% scoring above 50, with 40, and so that, and I want now to be very clear. By 2017, this is 2 years of a PNM administration, just 2. You had scoring below 30%, 11.9%. Scoring above 50, 68.5%. That you got to 2018, all of this is before the pandemic. Before the pandemic. You had persons scoring below 30, 13.6%. By 2019, you had 13.7%. And then you get to the pandemic years and you saw the result of the learning loss. But what can be demonstrated clearly by these figures is that the problem was not COVID. The problem was the PNM policy. And so to come in and say data from the SEA exam suggests that from 2010, things were not looking so good and that we must now do what we must to increase the level of student achievement. That, I think, is disingenuous. I think it is the PNM trying to make another excuse for what their failed policies have done to our children, and that you coming in now to use the vacation remedial program and to use different interventions to fix a problem that you created is problematic, because you cannot be the problem and the solution at the same time. It just does not make sense. I want to get to the very important point, Mr. Deputy Speaker, of school infrastructure. And this is a situation that is near and dear to my heart. At the close of the last session in Parliament, which is just September of this year, last month, I came to this house to ask an urgent question. The urgent question was on the state of the Gasparillo Secondary School. I came from meeting with parents and students of the school. I came having looked at photos and the state of dilapidation in the school. The school is about 5 minutes, if so much, away from my office. I came here and with all the goodness in my heart, I asked the question to the Minister of Education so that it could be on the record to the parents that this is the timeline for the issue to be fixed. What I actually got was that I was told that there was no issue and I was wrong. That there was no issue and that Block B had been fixed. So now I'm wondering, well, I had to be mad because I just came from there, right? I've seen the state of affairs going on in the Gasparillo Secondary School. So then you come in and I said, right. Then I started to get messages, a slew of messages from students, from parents of students in Princeton West Secondary School, from students in a school in Barataria, and students that these students are without furniture. And this is from a ministry that has $1 billion allocation. $8 billion. and that we are facing the students of our country, and we cannot fix infrastructure concerns. So if you cannot fix small problems, Mr. Deputy Speaker, if you cannot fix basic level problems, brick and mortar problems, you cannot tell me anything about digitization, you can't tell me anything about the curriculum, you cannot tell me anything about carrying our students forward, because brick and mortar is stumping you. Brick and mortar is troubling this PNM administration. And so I want to go to the budget debate for the appropriation, because again, the Minister of Education is yet to speak in the debate. So I cannot assess the statements given at this point in time. So I'll assess the statement given last year, and we'll see where we came to it, right, Mr. Deputy Speaker? So in 2022, as we discussed the financial year that just ended, we were told, and I'm going to directly quote the Minister of Education here. So school repair is always ongoing.
Just quote the source. Let's identify the source of the records. Right? Yeah,
correct?
The records.
The Hansard Appropriations Financial Year 2023. The date is September 30th, 2022. It is on page 177. Yes? And the speaker is the Minister of Education. So school repairs is always ongoing every day. Every single day, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have an average of 5 schools where we have emergencies that need attending to: plumbing, sewer, electrical, etc. But the time has come for us to sink some capital expenditure into school repairs, and therefore you will see this budget allocation, an increased allocation for school repair, so that we can take care of more of our schools. So I hope, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that if in 2022, September 30th, you are telling us in the budget debate that we are giving more money to school infrastructure and school repairs, and then I could come at the end of that financial year, September 2023, after having inexplicably trusted you the year before to fulfill this promise of ongoing emergency school infrastructure needs. And I could come here and tell you that a school at one, and I'll go to the others, but one of the schools in my constituency has dilapidated conditions. I am talking about railings falling down, the whiteboards peeling, severe dilapidation, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and that it was not fixed in 1 year, in a full year. Then I'm telling you, that is why we feel sometimes like we are wasting our time in this budget debate. Because if you could stand up in 2022 and say it will be done, and then 2023 you still stand up and say something else, I mean, at what point in time are we going to call a spade and say this? You are not making sense, because you'll come and say the same thing. I could also identify the repeated speeches. I could identify who came and said the same thing last year and brought it back this year. I can't identify it. But as I stand here as the representative for the constituency of Tabaki, as it stands right now, the students of the Gasparillo Secondary School have had to embark on a shift system, because despite what the minister would have said in answer to my question in September, the very next day, a letter was sent out to the PTA advising them that the students have to come to school on a shift basis because of repairs to the school. That I have the Happy Hill Hindu School that is currently, they are not in physical school because of repairs to the school, because the roof fell down during the repairs. And that is in my constituency. Everybody here, on this side and on that side, despite what they are going to do, can tell you about issues with school infrastructure. And I started with school infrastructure, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because if you had listened to the member for Dabadi O'Meara, who spoke about what was coming online and what records they were digitizing and what spaces and patted themselves on their back, and said congratulations to themselves when they know for a fact, if you looked at photos, if you just open your eyes, you will see what our students are going through, and you cannot be pleased with that. And that is not a question of being negative, it's a question of being absolutely factual. Mr. Deputy Speaker, every member has gotten up thus far and praised the $1,000 grant. They have said this is a great thing, that they have almost anointed, given Diego Martin Northeast sainthood for $1,000 for students who would, and persons who would in the future qualify via means test for this $1,000. We are all members of parliament here. A number of persons have acknowledged that they do book drives and back-to-school drives, etc. I want to know from the Diego Martin Northeast, what was the data, what was the calculation you used to arrive at $1,000 being what is required to maintain that social safety net, to get our students out of school? I want to know, because I have a feeling that their polling data, their insights show that they have negative feelings from the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And somebody across there, because thinking is a little hard, they say, you know what, if we get them $1,000, if we say, okay, $1,000 for needy students, everybody will feel good, and we'll get some accolades, and they can't say we are uncaring government. But if you calculate the actual cost of back to school, if you calculate, and if you know the realities parents are facing, but in particular low-income parents, in particular parents of students, parents who are from a rural community. When you look at textbooks, stationery, school uniform, and the cost of school transportation, I will tell you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, a lot of people will be hard-pressed to understand how you came up with $1,000. And so I want to raise the issue of school transportation in the context of what our citizens are facing every year. Every year without fail, I bring it up. It is something that plagues persons in my constituency, and I am sure several others. Increasing fuel prices over the past few years, the dilapidated state of our infrastructure has taken the cost of school, physically getting your children to school where they can go if the school is open. Physically getting your children to school has become onerous for people. It has become out of the reach for some ordinary citizens. And people will think we are making this up, eh? But if you have to pay $70 one way for one student to get to school, and then the school transportation buses that were provided before have now gone away without explanation. And that every year when I ask about it in standing finance, I am told it is happening when it is not really happening. What are our citizens to do? What are they actually supposed to face? What are persons in rural communities supposed to do? If there are no PTSC buses where the children can come for free, if there are no school transportation options, what are people expected to do? And then they're supposed to say thank you for $1,000? That, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I think is an indefensible space to stand from, and I cannot congratulate Diego Martin Northeast for doing something, the barest minimum to help our children stay in school. The member for Chaguanas East, in her contribution today, has said that in looking at the school dropout rates, and in her contribution, she was asking about this all-of-government approach that we keep hearing. She was asking about whether or not the Minister for Social Development and the Minister of Education, if anybody's working together to figure out where our children are going if they drop out of school, or why they are dropping out of school, or how many students are dropping out of school now to help out their families with meeting the economic circumstances facing Trinidad and Tobago. Can you believe that is a conversation we're having in 2023? In 2023, we have to accept that there are persons who have to choose between their education and being alive and feeding yourself, and so that you have children going out to work. You had a Minister of Labour talking about child labour policy, and you have the member for Dabadi O'Meara coming here to talk about all manner of sports day, right? About a sports day and all fours and cricket, and could never tell us of the 46,000 students who never accessed online learning, and then in the information coming from the FOIA of the 2,800 students who have dropped out of primary and secondary school, can't tell us anything about these children, but come to tell me about a sports day after receiving $8.02 billion. It is unacceptable, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We have yet to hear from the Minister of Works. I don't know what difference that would make, but at the end of the day, there are schools within my constituency, the Caratal RC School, that remains inaccessible based on the road network. And every time I ask about it, we are told, okay, it's a secondary road. When we wrote to the Rural Development Company, and I'll come to the member for San Fernando West, Minister of Rural Development shortly, but when we wrote and we said, okay, it's a secondary road, but the cost of the road cannot be met by the corporation, and therefore somebody in this billion-dollar government could find something to do to make sure that these communities remain connected and accessible, and then we get no answer. But then the Minister for Rural Development here came today to tell me about value for money when I have students breaking their foot going to school in Caratal RC. I mean, it is unbelievable. And so when I say we are existing in a space of absolute delusion, I'm being very serious, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And when we look all across this budget, every space within this budget, and every member of the opposition would have shown you different pockets of the same delusion. But I was going through the budget documents and I looked on the space under agriculture. And they were talking about that we are rehabilitating 240 kilometers of access roads. And that
you just have approximately 2 more minutes of your initial speaking time. You have an additional 10 minutes. You care to avail yourself?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Go ahead. Thank you. And on the very next page, after we are rehabilitating the 240 kilometers of access road, on the very next page in the budget document, the Minister of Finance told the people of Trinidad and Tobago that we are revitalizing the cocoa industry, which is already employing almost 2,000 persons from production to value-added activities. In my constituency, Mr. Deputy Speaker, exists the Montserrat Farmers, the Cocoa Farmers Association in Montserrat in the Grand Couva area. In November of 2022, the rains at the end of November of 2022 led to the collapse of the Grand Couva Road, the absolute collapse of the Grand Couva Road. In December of 2022, the Prime Minister announced $100+ million emergency allocation for the roads and spaces that were damaged in November of 2022. I am standing here in October of 2023. The road is the same. The road is in the same state. It's probably worse right now. And then they stood up in the budget that said we are building capacity for diversification and growth. And we're supposed to believe this. But the cocoa farmers that in your budget, the cocoa industry that you are revitalizing, they cannot access their spaces because of the destruction of the roadway and money you promised in 2022. And we're supposed to believe anything that's going on here? And you are talking about agriculture and creating space, and we're discussing the spaces that you are going to look to diversify. And I can tell you how I know for a fact as a mama guy. I know for a fact. Existing within the Tabakit constituency, there are a number of very profitable farmers. They have kept Trinidad and Tobago fed during the pandemic years. You have the Tipidi farmers, you have the Lightbourne farmers, you have Caratal farmers, you have the farmers in Grand Couva. In the central range, where the Tabakit constituency lies, there's arable land, there are places that produce hundreds and thousands of tonnage in crops. And that we would be asking for years now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, years, in the same market box that we are told to say thank you for and congratulate them for. The farmers that are carrying the produce for the market box are literally begging for a bridge in the Bacchus Trace. The farmers in Tortuga had their produce tipped over because of the state of the roadways, and that you are talking about diversification, but in reality, the persons who are doing the hard work of diversifying, the hard work of bringing in agriculture into the productive sector, they are not being brought into the development of Trinidad and Tobago because you can't fix brick and mortar problems like roads. And so that when you have to consider things like curriculum development, knowledge-based society, etc., and things like how to patch and pave a road stumps a government for 9 years, you understand exactly why we are facing what we are facing. That you understand that when we talk about the interventions, the things that we are told to say thank you for, so the social safety net, the $1,000, the governance by grants that we are seeing right now, that what we've had is a lack of acknowledgement by the People's National Movement, that all of these expanded social programs that you have to put in place, all of the grants that we are seeing, that they are symptoms, they are as a result of failed policies that have created a nation that is more dependent than independent in 2023. That what you have created in the last 8 years, with your last 8 budgets, are not citizens that are more resilient. You have not helped the entrepreneurial spirit. You have not created any of the things to grow and create a nation that will thrive. You have made us more dependent and expanded the facilities of the government to say that we will give you and we will help you. That is not what your job is. Your job is to create an enabling environment so that we can help ourselves. And so, when the member for La Hokata Talpara spoke very early on in this debate, very, very early on, talking about all of these things, the opportunities that we are providing, the skills training, etc., and the member for Point Up here pointed out that several of these things existed before. You know what was any things that have been scrapped, Mr. Deputy Speaker? One of the things that in Trinidad and Tobago, again, it's very important for politicians, persons who do policy, who set policy, to be in touch with the people of the realities that people of Trinidad and Tobago face. In communities in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a large apprenticeship culture. So if you live in certain communities and the mechanic, you could become a trained mechanic without the certification, right? Because you served as an apprentice. Same thing with air conditioning, refrigeration, etc. We have a large expansion, a whole conversation on TechFoc and the importance of reintroducing TechFoc. You know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, what this PNM administration met in 2015 when they entered was a workforce assessment center. And I'm bringing this up because under the Ministry of Science, Technology and Tertiary Education, if you had the skill set, you had the competency, and you could demonstrate the skill set via the examination and the prior learning assessment recognition process, you were able to get the certification and put yourself into the world of work as an entrepreneur, as a person who can enter the service industry, as a mechanic, as a mason, and all of these important things that they are now trying to reinvent the wheel. Like, they did not scrap this program in 2015. And then the Minister of Finance came in and said, they're looking at spaces to train more TVET, more technical vocation. Because the fact of the matter is, all of these programs depend on there being instructors. And they met a program that had a training system for technical vocational educators. They met an expanded TechVoc and CVQ system. They met all of that and they destroyed it completely. So much so that MTES, it was so far advanced that by 2014, the Ministry of Tertiary Education had a TVET Masters at UWI, that UWI launched the Masters in Technical Vocational Education and Training program because we were so advanced with having instructors that had they just not been bad mind and petty, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the conversation that we could have been having today would have been remarkably different. Remarkably different. And so I listened to different members come here and talk about programs to expand TechVoc, programs to expand digital education, the e-book system, etc. And I wonder, when you came in 2015 and you saw the programs and you saw the policy documents, did you decide that you would rather shelve it, see if you could come up with something slightly better or better, and then come 2023, between 2022 and 2023, realize nothing's coming to you. So you take it back out the shelf, dust it off, and trying to reinvent it and put it as P&M policy. Is that what you're doing now? And so, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I conclude, you
just have over 2 minutes.
Yeah. Yes. As I conclude, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in 1983, a P&M government led by George Chambers, they got a report, Imperatives of Adjustment, right, that discussed all of these things, the recommendations to remedy the problems that Trinidad and Tobago could face. That, Mr. Deputy Speaker, over the years, what we have seen is a P&M administration that has been unwilling to fix the issues facing Trinidad and Tobago. That a functioning, equitable education sector that produces world-class innovators and so it does not benefit a P&M administration. And so that we will keep repeating these problems, we will keep facing these issues, because what we are facing is not, as I said before, a resource problem. It is a management problem. It is a political philosophy problem. It is an issue that the People's National Movement, this is the type of Trinidad and Tobago that they enjoy seeing. They enjoy seeing a Trinidad and Tobago where people are hoping that the government is the savior. Nobody wants a government to be their savior. What they want is a government to be functional, to create an enabling environment, to do your job, do your basic job, and we will be okay, right? And so that until the P&M understands that your role here is to create a Trinidad and Tobago that allows our citizens to thrive, we are not ever going to come out of this hole until the P&M changes its political philosophy or finds itself out of office completely. And I thank you, Mr. Deputy.